What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? We're back for another Legends of Runeterra video for you all, and today we are going to be going over the results of the Twitch Rivals tournament that we're just fresh off of finishing, and we're just going to cover some of the deck lists, some of the breakdowns of the decks and regions and everything that people were using when they showed up to this tournament, and we're just going to do a quick little breakdown just of everything we saw in the tournament for the first part of the video, and then for the second part of the video it'll be more of like an opinion piece of what I think the main takeaways are from the tournament, how it went, just kind of stuff like that. So for people that are interested in more of just like the nitty-gritty, the details about the tournament, this would be the section you want to stick around for, and then I'll put a link to when we're just kind of covering a little bit more of like opinion stuff, kind of, you know, the drama, the kind of stuff that went down during the tournament that wasn't necessarily about the main takeaways for the game, but a little bit of stuff that went down. So yeah, we'll just jump into a quick little region breakdown for what we have here. I'm gonna put a link down to a little just quick Imgur thread for just these two images, just to show the region representation here for the decks, and then also our next image here, which is just a breakdown of the actual deck lists that we use really quick. Hold on, this seems to, oh yeah, okay, here we go. The actual deck lists here that we are working with for this Twitch Rivals tournament. So yeah, obviously here we're seeing a huge representation of Shadow Isles P and Z. I mean, it's not to be unsurprising considering that a lot of the most popular decks like Karina with Vi and the Heimer Vi variants saw a significant representation in this tournament. It would seem that everything is actually pretty well rounded, surprisingly, with the decks and regions that were represented. Obviously, kind of surprising with the Noxus not being as well represented, considering the high tier status of just straight burn right now in the, I guess, ladder metagame. And not as well represented with the tournament strategies. It seems like people favored obviously a lot more of like the Demacia and the PNZ Shadow Isles control stuff, which makes a lot of sense for a tournament metagame. I mean, you can just, obviously, since it's Conquest format where you can burn a deck, ban a deck, and then just pick the decks you want to play against, you can, if you're super scared of the burn matchup, you can just ban it away and not have to deal with it at all. But if you bring something like Shadow Isles, you don't necessarily even have to ban burn unless you're fearing, you know, the return ban on your Shadow Isles if they're having some sort of really burn dependent strategy with their lineup. So not surprising to see this kind of lineup. Freljord, I'm kind of surprised actually had as much representation. It seemed like a lot of the players that aren't as familiar with the metagame wanted to bring more of the Ashe midrange and Sejuani kind of stuff. And then people, obviously, I think the Freljord representation is kind of high just because a lot of people who ran Bannerman Demacia teched a like one of Fury of the North in the deck, or like a one of Omen Hawk was seen in one list. So I think that the Freljord representation is a little high for, in the region representation, I mean, just for what was actually brought in terms of actual like Freljord decks. So this is not the best representation of what we've got going on here. So I think it's best to just jump into the lists, break down a little bit more and see what we're working with. So here we are. There's a lot of information to throw in, but like I said, I'm going to put in like an Imgur thread. Oh, whoops. That's some stuff for thumbnails. And then, so yeah, I'm going to put this in an Imgur thread so it's, you can kind of digest it on your own time if we run over things a little bit quickly here. So biggest representation, this makes a lot of sense. Karina, Weimer being by Heimerdinger, Endure and Bannerman being like pretty stable tier 1, tier 2 mix here with, I mean, these are pretty much tier 1 tournament lists. This is something you could definitely expect to see if you're looking into like the community tournaments as well. This is not an uncommon spread. I mean, Bannerman, you probably see a little bit more representation because the nice thing about Bannerman is you can just, if you really want to, just do mono Bannerman, and most likely people will ban it because it's so ridiculously consistent and hard to overcome a lot of time if people are just and sorry, it's one region, so you can kind of just like focus your other two lineups on really powerful decks and just kind of throw Demacia away in a sense by just playing Bannerman. So this is a pretty normal lineup to see. Karina is obviously really strong. That's why Mogwai, who won the lower bracket, brought his kind of like anti-Karina lists with his. He brought sea monsters. He brought the Fiora kind of like undying combo and the. I can't remember his third list actually off the top of my head. I have them pulled up, so we'll review them in just 1 second. But he brought this kind of anti-Karina conquest lineup, and it would have paid off, barring. Yeah, I don't want to get into it too much. I mean, it's not really like anyone's fault, but barring anything that kind of like weird went on with the management of the tournament. So we have Krina, Bannerman, Endure, Vimer having the most representation. Then we have Karma Lux, which makes a lot of sense. BBG has been really representing this deck on the ladder, and it's super stable control lists. So this makes sense that people kind of threw this in here with a lot of the other lists. We have Sea Monsters making another strong showing in a tournament as well. I think the last Duels of Runeterra had a decent amount of Sea Monsters representation in the upper echelons of the placements. Then we have TF Swain, which I think won the last, which was included in the lineup that won. I think it was either the last Duels of Runeterra, which is the Conquest format, or was the sideboard tournament. And then we have Burn, Scouts. I'm saying Scouts just because it includes MF for the most part, but most of the lists are just Bannerman for the most part with MF, so you could make an argument that Bannerman actually had 8 slots and was the highest represented deck in the tournament. I just broke it up for the kind of simplicity's sake because they're doing slightly different things, so it's just kind of a slightly different archetype. But for the most part, I'd say Bannerman had the most representation between Scouts and the Bannerman categories here. So potentially you can make an argument where I should have just included these. There's 8 slots on Bannerman, and it was the most represented deck, which makes a lot of sense. Most people are just, if they're bringing Demacia, they're just going to be bringing Bannerman, and most likely expecting people to just ban that straight out and focusing on their other 2 lists for what they want to bring, which is why TF Swain's really popular, and kind of like Vimer, Karma as stuff, and stuff like that is really popular as well, or like Karina, because they don't cover the same regions, that they don't have the conflicting region with Demacia at all. So and then we have a surprising amount of just kind of one-off randomness going on. Obviously Mogwai taking up 2 of these slots. That's right, he played as Karma as his other slot, and then he played, like I said before, he played the Fiora combo. So these 2 decks right here. We had Swain Sejuani, which was Kibler's deck. We had this other Fizz TF Lisa and Klepto, which was Swim's other deck. And then we had a mishmash of kind of other kind of stuff. We had Hecker and Maokai Endure, which was really interesting. I don't necessarily know if it's a better version of the Endure straight up kind of streamlined archetype, but I guess there's kind of, it's just an interesting kind of spin-off of the Endure type of lists. I think the streamer that used it mentioned to Mogwai when he was playing him that he got it from Mogwai's channel, and that seems to be kind of the like lists that he used for the most part, was just kind of like net decked, more fun, less optimized tournament lists. So that seems to be a lot of these one-offs, not necessarily the most optimized kind of conquest lineups that you would expect, but I don't think this was the kind of tournament that you would expect people to be super intensely focused on doing optimized conquest lineups, because most of them aren't necessarily Legends of Runeterra tournament streamers. So I think overall it was an interesting lineup to see, and it's with the heavy representation on this left side of the graph, you can see that people were still aware of like what an optimized kind of conquest lineup would be. So we can go ahead and pop over to the deck list and just take a look. So Dog was the first place of the upper bracket, and he brought the Karina control, the Twisted Fate Swain kind of mid-range control stuff, and then the Karma Lux control deck. So pretty streamlined conquest format lineup. The only thing I'd say might be different in this would be maybe this is like a Bannerman with like a 1-up deny potentially, but beyond that I think these 2 are pretty commonplace at this point in the conquest format. Maybe the next Duels of Runeterra is actually this weekend, so we might see some stuff switch up in terms of what the top players are playing, but for the most part, I think this is a pretty straightforward Conquest lineup. And then we have, this is Mogwai's lineup, and then we have Swim's lineup here with the, like I was talking about before, the one-off Fury of the North, which is kind of why in the region breakdown Freljord was a little bit more represented than I think it should have in terms of like what the data is actually representing, because most of the Bannerman lineups kind of included like a one-off Fury of the North or some sort of like one-off Freljord tech. So Freljord might not be in the best spot right now, especially with the way that burn and everything else and all the other control stuff have on them. So I guess we can expect maybe some kind of tweaks in the future for Freljord or the other regions, kind of bringing them more in line with each other. And then we have this interesting, I'm not so sure why the one of Fizz is in this, I guess to increase the consistency of potentially getting the Klepto procs, and maybe to kind of like confuse players that aren't necessarily as familiar with all of the lineups, and maybe thinking he can get something done cheeky with the Fizz, maybe people not respecting what Fizz can do in terms of like spell interaction and stuff like that. So pretty straightforward list outside of maybe the Fizz, but I mean, Twisted Fate and Lee Sin combo is what we've seen a lot in the Conquest format. It's very strong, and it's something if you're going to be playing tournaments or you're interested in looking into in the future, this is a deck you should be aware of and be paying attention to, playtesting, getting familiar with. And then obviously, again, we see the Karina Vi control Corvina, as it's aptly named by the original creator, I guess, Alon's Q TFT, another of the Mobalytics guys that kind of runs the metagame breakdown for the site here, along with Swim. So Karina obviously pretty staple in the Conquest format. Mogwai obviously made the correct decision by trying to target this because it was all over the place and it rose to the top in a lot of the standings. So yeah, pretty straightforward. We can go over Mogwai's list really quick, and that'd be Karma Ez. I mean, he was saying on stream, I'm pretty sure why he brought this is just because it's super busted, and it can definitely feed off of the Karina lists if they don't necessarily if they don't play around like what's going on properly. I think that's another reason why he might have brought it. Maybe players aren't playing around the power of Karma as evidenced in his match against Crip, where he was literally reading Ezreal's level up as they were finishing off the game, so he clearly didn't know how many of these cards worked. So yeah, I mean, power level of this deck is insane, especially if you can just get the Karma Ez, and if people aren't respecting you developing both the cards, then it's just like pretty much GG on the spot. So it makes sense to bring this along with the other ones that he brought, and he brought Deep, which is another control archetype. The power level is pretty nuts. The power level is pretty nuts when you get everything you need, and it has a solid win con against Karina if you can get the Maokai leveled up. I mean, they pretty much can't do anything. They literally, like, if you get the Maokai leveled up, they can't play the Karinas anymore, and then if you're able to obliterate their Ladruses with your Devourer at the Depths once you're deep, then you literally take care of both their win cons on the spot. So it's pretty disgusting against that matchup if you don't, if the deck doesn't beat itself. I've said before that the deck pretty much loses to Will of Ionia and itself. Those are its two biggest enemies, and yeah, as long as it doesn't lose to itself in the Karina matchup, it has a really easy time against those two specific cards because, like I said, you just kind of delete their win cons with a few of your cards. And then this is the spicy list that Mogwai brought. He said he tested, I think he said 20 games against aggro over the course of the last week, and he went 16-4. And then today, unfortunately, the deck beat itself, which makes sense because you're really heavily relying on drawing your Fiora, and I mean, you're pretty much hard mulliganing for Fiora every time, and if you don't hit it, you're going to be in a pretty awkward spot. Obviously, it has like tools to draw out the game with your Fleet Feathers and your Valors here with the Blinding Assaults, and you potentially buff those up to remove things and delay the game with Iceveil Archer, but the deck can obviously be pretty clunky. But I mean, if you get the Fiora on the board and you're against Karina and you get your Unyieldings or you get all your other combat tricks going, you can pretty easily clean up against them, or even aggros. Like, if you get your combat tricks going, you get the Fiora on the board, it's going to be, I mean, a pretty safe game, especially with like the healing from the Kindly Tavern Keeper and like all your other chump blockers. And if you get the Radiant Guardian to stick as well, I mean, like, aggro can't really respond. If the game drags out to turn 5 and you are able to get a Radiant Guardian on the board and it sticks, then, I mean, it's very rarely a winning circumstance at that point for aggro. So, yeah, I mean, those are pretty much the lists. I'd say, like, I'm going to put a link in the description for all of the lists, and like I said, I'm going to put a link in the description for a little Imgur thread for the 2 breakdowns I put, but this is pretty much what you would expect from a Conquest tournament format, especially in terms of the people that placed highly. Yeah, I'll put those links in the description, like I said, just so you can potentially digest the information on your own and kind of see what we're working with. I'm going to try to do kind of like a weekly tournament recap every week, maybe on like Sundays, because we have a ton of different community tournaments. We have Jam Fest. I'll put information for these tournaments in the link, or links in the description as well, for the Discords and stuff, or the information where you can find out more about these tournaments. We have Jam Fest every other week. We have Duels of Runeterra every other week. These are community tournaments that are definitely worth checking out if you want to see what the like top level players, like, you know, Cephalopod, Fresh Lobster, BBG, all these other guys that are placing very consistently in tournaments. We'll see what they're doing, seeing what they're bringing to these tournaments. I would definitely recommend checking those tournaments out. It's great content. You will learn a ton about the game if you're interested in learning about the game. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you're not going to stick around for kind of the opinion portion, I guess, of this, then I guess this is where we part ways. But I'm going to just kind of briefly talk about everything that went on in the tournament, and I guess give my 2 cents on what went down. So, I mean, there was obviously, I think the main takeaways from how this tournament was run are that there needs to potentially be it needs to be looked at, either the rules for the tournament in terms of time limit, or the rules of the game in terms of how the in-game clock works. Just because I don't necessarily think obviously people will point to Swim taking his time and potentially trying to maliciously rope Mogwai out of this set, which I don't think is the case at all. Swim is, I wouldn't say notorious, but he's known for taking his time, playing the game at a very slow pace, thinking about his turns, and I also just don't think it's warranted the kind of backlash he got for playing the way that he plays and playing within the rules of the game. It's kind of insane, and I mean, I think Mogwai is a little bit at fault as well, because he's just an emotional guy, obviously, but I mean, it's hard for you to separate your emotions when you don't realize the kind of backlash that it's going to have on, you know, someone that you respect in the community. And it was kind of a shame and a bad look for everyone in this community that, you know, people bullied Swim to the point of, you know, kind of having a little bit of an emotional breakdown. I mean, it's pretty sad. I just don't think that anyone should have to go through that. And he was literally playing within the rules of the game. And you can, just to defend him a little bit, you can see that through his other actions in the tournament that, I mean, he wasn't trying to be malicious, I don't think. And I mean, even Mogwai says he doesn't think that. So I think his emotions just got the better of him a little bit, and, you know, it led to like a kind of pseudo witch hunt against Swim for potentially, in a lot of people's eyes, that he was maliciously roping, which, I mean, I don't think it was the case. So that also kind of, I mean, it falls on the tournament organizers a little bit, because there was inconsistencies with how the draws in the rounds were taken care of. Like with Swim and Crip's game, they waited. I'm not sure if they waited or they just weren't being as prompt as they should have been with keeping up with how the rounds were going. But yeah, Swim said that Crip won, so Crip was given the win for the match with the 2-1, even though I think they were already over time limit and over the +3 turns, so it should have technically been a draw, I guess. But I mean, Swim gave the round to Crip. That's what he told the moderators of the tournament. And then later on, when the match should have I guess Swim said he was going to forfeit, I guess, but it's hard to say. It wasn't handled the same way. It was given a draw, and then the round was over before anyone could even message anyone about potentially like dropping or forfeiting the match. So forfeiting the match. So it's a little sloppily handled. I think it's a bad look for the community. I mean, there was mistakes on every side really, from running the tournament, from swim side, from Mogwai side. Obviously, it's hard to, in hindsight, it's easy, I guess I should say, to see all that happening and be like, oh, we should have done this instead. And it's all just a learning experience. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for the drama. And then, yeah, I think it's just, again, to kind of like represent the tournament community. I think it's also a shame that Twitch Rivals didn't necessarily bring the top talent in terms of Legends of Runeterra players. Obviously, from Twitch Rivals' perspective, they are run through Twitch Prime and through Twitch, and they're a business, and they want high view counts so that they can obviously run their ads, get their revenue, and everything like that. But yeah, I think it's unfortunately kind of a bad look for the game that someone who doesn't play the game regularly on stream. I mean, Dog obviously plays a lot of the game. He's a super talented player. Nothing against him. He deserved to win the tournament hands down. He played the best, and he played lists that were very good and well suited for the format, and he deserved to win the tournament hands down. I'm not saying he didn't, but I think there should have been a better representation from the player base that actually consistently plays the game and places in tournaments and plays the tournament kind of formats and community tournaments more consistently. So that was definitely a letdown. I mean, I can see it's like, I think it's good for both. I think it's good for the tournament, like the game overall, the tournament. I can see why people are disappointed not being able to compete, and like with someone not necessarily from the community right now winning the tournament, but there should be tournaments in the future that everyone can compete in, and I think everyone will have a shot. So to, have those big finishes, have those big prize pools, and only time will tell like where this game is going to go. And people that are playing consistently and on their own time kind of shaping the metagame through their play and through what they're doing in tournaments, those people will trickle to the top again. And I mean, it's one placement or it's one tournament, and it's a shame that it's like the biggest tournament that the game has had, but I think it's going to bring in a lot of new faces to the game, and I don't think the drama is going to be, for the long run, unhealthy for the game. I think drama is good for the game. I'm sad for Swim that he took it so poorly. I mean, not poorly, just took it so hard. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's about it. I'm kind of rambling at this point, obviously, but yeah, that's pretty much my take on everything that went down. I think it's good for the game overall. The game needs drama, and I'm just honestly excited for players that consistently do well in community tournaments to get their shot at like a big prize pool. I think that's going to be really good for the game. That's going to be the best thing. I guess eyes are on Riot now, really, is what it comes down to take initiative, get some representation for people that are consistently playing in this tournament or in this game at a high level competitively, and giving them a shot at some representation. And I mean, it's cool to see that other people from other games are interested in the game now. Like Kibler was legitimately playing the game after the tournament was over. I know Dog plays the game off stream. Obviously, he was in D2, so he obviously put some time in the game. I think he was Masters in beta. So I mean, like, yeah, I hope that they are interested in playing the game after the tournament today, and I hope their audiences bring in more people that are also interested in the game. I think it's in a really good spot right now, and it really can only go up. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm going to be doing more tournament breakdowns. This was the first one I kind of went with, so it is pretty bare bones, and I obviously rambled a lot because there's a lot to cover through the drama and everything that went down with the Twitch Rivals. But I think that obviously this format, this type of video will get better over time as I get more experience with it and just kind of get more comfortable with doing it. But if you stuck around here, I really appreciate it. Please feel free to let me know whether you're like, what side of the drama you're on, whatever you want to say about it. I would love to have a healthy conversation about what's going on. and what your thoughts are on the game, and I hope to hear from you. But if you like the content, like, comment, subscribe. There should be another tournament kind of summary. We'll probably quickly touch base on this tournament again, just because it falls under this week, obviously. And yeah, a new kind of series I'm going to be working on will come out tomorrow. We're just going to be doing Fun Deck Fridays, where we kind of we take a trip through normals and not worry about obviously ranked and everything like that, and just kind of play decks that are not good in a sense, but are fun and really good in a fun sense. So look forward to that. I look forward to hearing from you. If you, like I said, if you like the content, like, comment, subscribe, and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.